Members, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this meeting of the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Authority. Telephones silent, please. Would help. I wish to remind members that this meeting is taking place during the pre-election period for the up-and-coming local elections, including Portsmouth and Southampton City Councils on the 4th of May, a period known as PERDA, which basically means you're not allowed to do any political hand-mandering and all that sort of stuff. Therefore, notwithstanding the authority's ability to hold business as usual discussions and discussion-making, members should remain mindful of in Section 2 of the Local Government Act 1986 and the recommended practice on local authority publicity. This meeting is being recorded for broadcast on the authority website and will be available for repeated viewings. The press and members of the public are also permitted to film and broadcast this meeting. Those remaining at this meeting are consenting to being filmed and recorded, and to the possible use of those images and recordings for broadcasting purposes. There is no scheduled fire alarm today. In the event of an alarm going off, you should follow someone in uniform that way and end up in the car park. You know how the microphones work. If you're not using yours, turn it off, please, because it does drain the strength of others on mics. So, item 1, apologies for absence. Katie?
We've received apologies from Councillor Karen Lucioni from the Isle of Wight and also Donna Jones, Police and Crime Commissioner.
Okay, thank you. I would like to welcome Councillor David Drew, following his appointment to the Fire Authority in replace of Gary Hughes, who has gone west. That's down to the West Country. I would also like to welcome Claire Bartlett, who is our new head of comms, who is lurking in the corner over there. Welcome, welcome. Declarations of interest, anybody? No. Item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. Let me just go through them. Page 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Anybody? Wait, let me sign them. Deputations. Chairman's announcements. First off, the Local Government Association Fire Conference in Nottingham at the beginning of March. I attended that together with Councillor Huggins, Price, Bundy and our chief, and Matt Robinson. And it was, well, like all these things, it's, you know, what you put into it, you get out of. And it's always very good to chat to people who, from other authorities and other services and things. I wasn't quite as good as the one in Newcastle in terms of hotel-wise, but it was useful. Chief?
Thanks, Chairman. I think for officers also getting that sense of members across the country and their views on things and the conversations that happen, it's a really, really important opportunity for us to compare, and for members from this authority to attend and just see how we do in comparison as well. So it was a useful expedition, but yeah, and we learned a lot.
Okay, thanks. Those members who went, any? Roger.
I think from my point of view, I found the conference a little bit disappointing in a way, because there were not the number of people there as usual. The exhibition was much smaller than usual, and it was not in a very good place for the layout of the hotel. So I would hope the LGA have learned a lesson in that and to go back to either Newcastle or somewhere else where you can have a proper laid out exhibition area. I think that some of the preliminary sections and the workshops were interesting. I think it was a pity the Minister was on video rather than being in person, and I think we, as a service, have always found difficult to get the minister to our conferences, unfortunately. That's not being political in any way. That is across the political spectrum. So, but it's a problem. But it was interesting, and you always pick up something every time you go to a conference like that and learn something, which I think we all did. Thank you.
Well, now that you're a man of importance on the LGA, you can sort it out for next year. Can you? Okay.
Let me just explain the situation of where I am with the LGA. I've always been a recent times a Liberal Democrat deputy on the Fire Service Management Committee. Keith, who is our lead on the Fire Service Management Committee, is not seeking re-election in York to the council in May, and therefore has to come off from the 1st of May off of all his LGA responsibilities. And therefore the other person on the LGA from the Liberal Democrats moves up into his position, and I move in to the second member on the committee. So I will be attending the LGA Fire Service Management Committee meetings, and also the fire conferences. So that's where I am. But any help I can get the service or anybody else, I will try and do.
Thanks. And welcome to Donna Jones, our Police and Crime Commissioner, who has a standing seat here. Silly joke, but thank you, Laura. Next is the opening of the Bishop's Waltham Fire Station, which happened on the 27th of March, together with the Chief and the Lord Lieutenant of Hampshire and Councillor Drew. Anyone else was there? Maybe you were there, and Tony Bundy was there as well, which was a great event. It was an extraordinarily impressive fire station. Small, but beautiful use of space and everything else was absolutely brilliant. Rather erroneously reported in the Portsmouth News as costing £27 million, which would make it the most expensive fire station in the world. That was not true. But all in all, an extremely good and happy event. Chief?
Just to put on record my thanks on behalf of the service to the Fire Authority for investment in our fire stations. It is really important for the support and maintenance, particularly our on-call staff. It's the first new on-call station for a very, very long time, and thank you also to the estates team with Matt Robertson's leadership on what a fantastic building it is. Thank you very much.
Want to say anything?
I thought it was an excellent event, and really nice to see that centred in the community, and some of the community there. I think it did the service a good impression.
Okay, thanks. David.
Yes, thanks, Chairman. No, I thought it was a brilliant facility. I can't imagine it cost 27. What was it? What did it cost? 2.7. Probably, perhaps closer. Anyway, while that's being worked out, no, I thought it was very interesting to have a tour of the facility, to see the community facilities there as well, but also to have a much better, because I'm the new boy here, to have a much better understanding of the way the fire service operated when they returned to base, and they had all the washing machines and all the other facilities that are sort of obviously important when you think about it and see it. So yeah, really useful introduction, and delighted to have the invite and to chat with the Chief and the Deputy.
Okay, thanks. Next up, yes.
Say, I think some of our full-time stations will be quite jealous of the facilities which they have in a on-call station there. And I can think of two in mine and in Zoe's area.
Deal with it. Okay, next up is the volunteer recognition event. This was held at headquarters here on the 28th of March to celebrate our volunteers and the many ways that they support the service. Again, I mean, who was there? Me, Stu was there, the Deputy of Hampshire, Tom Floyd, and several members as well. I'm grateful for the dedication and commitment to the service given by our volunteers. This past financial year, they have contributed over 7,000 hours of their time to support the service and our wider communities. And with all these things, they are hugely appreciative if we turn up, which is, you're all very good at it, but we must keep this going because I thought it was a great evening. Stu's not here. Who was there? You were there.
Yeah, and I think it was the first volunteer recognition event after the kite mark that the authority now holds. What was really lovely to hear is the volunteer stories and those impacted by the volunteers. And I think to learn and hear about them feeling inclusive of the authority, feeling part of that member of the authority was really lovely to hear. And those impacted by the volunteer programmes and then going on to volunteer themselves. What was really striking, I think, is some of the service awards that were given from 5 years to 25 years, am I right in saying? Astounding for volunteering. So, yeah, excellent event.
Okay, thanks. And while we're on the subject, coming up this week, there is a Prince's Trust at Redbridge in the evening tomorrow, on Wednesday, to which I know some of you are going. On Thursday, there's a Prince's Trust at 2 o'clock in the afternoon in the Isle of Wight, which I'm going to and Zoe's going to, and also at 6 o'clock in Basingstoke in the evening, which I'm going to. That's 2 in a day. This is marvellous stuff. Anyway, again, you know what Karen, and her staff are absolutely over the moon that we go to these things, and it's absolutely right and proper that we should. But the Prince's Trust, you could look upon as the foundation of hugely well done, and thank you. Just a little bit on Aaron Jepp, who was a watch manager at Rushmore, who sadly passed away after a period of ill health, and his funeral will take place on the 25th of April. Aaron was a highly regarded member of Rushmore White Watch for many years. He served full-time and as a Prince's Trust team leader. Aaron was sought by his friends and colleagues, and our thoughts are with him, with his family and friends. Item 6, member developments. Speak. Roger.
Sharon, you know I've always been very keen that the members should be involved in the safety partnerships, so as they know what is actually happening. The fire service is represented by an officer there, but I always felt that members should be involved as well. I actually went along in February to the Farehams Fire Safety Partnership, and was of an interest to me there. It was raised that under the guidance issued under the Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Act 2022, that the Fire and Rescue Service is one of the specified authorities to be involved with the domestic abuse. And I find that very difficult to understand. I fully accept and understand that when the fire service go into a property, whether it's for a fire call or whether doing inspections or what, if they see something, they have a duty and a responsibility to report it, as anybody really should have. But I can't see how we can be involved as a helper to deal with domestic abuse. And I'd like some information from officers on that. It just doesn't seem to make sense to me. When you look at the people that are involved with the police, probation, youth offending teams, health, and people like that, and the police and the crime commissioner, I can understand it. But we sit on the periphery of that, I think. And I'd just like to get to understand it more. And I would also like to put another plea in. We should re-look at members attending safety partnerships.
Okay, well, the Chief can answer that, and perhaps Donna might want to say something afterwards. Chief?
Yeah, thank you for the questions. So 2 things. The community safety partnerships refer to one are in been a review period by government, and a number of local authorities, fire authorities and others will be asked to consider their roles in that space as well. I personally strongly believe in a role with the community safety partnerships. We've had a long-standing relationship with our CSPs across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. I think we've got a huge amount to contribute. On your second part of the question around, and I think the thing you referred to is the serious violence duty, which is now being enacted. As it happens, luckily for us, I guess, I'm the National Fire Chiefs Council lead for this area with prevention, and in fact I'm speaking at a conference coming up in Birmingham about the fire services contributions. So more than happy to bring a paper back to the authority to answer your questions more thoroughly in terms of the work we're already doing with our local policing colleagues and the OPCC around serious violence, which includes domestic violence as well, of course, but a range of other things as well. There's also quite a big suggestion now that we move towards duties within counter-terrorism prevent as a fire and rescue service, fire and rescue authority. So there's a growing demand on organisations like ours, because we have a very strong reputation with our communities, we have a very trusted relationship with our communities. It's very clear to me that people trust us and our people to enter their homes, to give them advice, to help them make sure they're as safe as they can be. And sometimes that means we come across issues which leave us in a situation we have no choice but to refer to partner agencies. And that could be the fact that we're threats from violence, either from in a domestic setting, or they could be involved in gangs, or it could be various other things which our policing colleagues are much more attuned to than we are. But nonetheless, the training we have, the training we'll continue to roll out, is to allow our teams to be cognizant and recognise those signs so they can be signposting into the appropriate authorities. So the duty within the serious crime or serious violence duty is about making sure we work with the constabulary and the OPCC to make sure we have got facilities to engage and refer people or places or things back into those organisations. So we're not got any further powers to actually act other than refer across to other agencies. But you do, and therefore we do, have now a duty to collaborate, to work with our partners. That's nothing new, to be fair. It just focuses on serious violence as an aspect of our concerns. So we're certainly doing that training. Training's rolling out nationally, but I have to say that I think we're well placed to assist. It doesn't put any undue duties on us, and I'm happy to do a paper on the kind of details of that in the forthcoming meeting, if that would suit you.
Thank you very much. So in terms of, just to follow on and not repeat what Neil's just said, in terms of the Domestic Abuse Act, the landmark Domestic Abuse Act that came into play in 2021, it is much more wide-reaching than it ever has been before, and it does put a number of duties on public sector, and particularly including councils, who now have, as you're probably aware, the duty to provide refuge, which means that a lot of the contracts that have been commissioned for domestic abuse now must include women's refuges, and that is something that I co-commission with the county and the two city districts as well, city unitary, sorry. The CSP review that Neil's just referred to is really is big. There's not only a review going on of community safety partnerships nationally, there's also a review going on of criminal justice boards, which Police and Crime Commissioners chair, and that also has a duty, particularly around a lot of the VORG stuff that comes through the local criminal justice board. So, for example, the CPS will be giving me their information, probation will be giving me their information, the Directors of Public Health. So there's an awful lot that goes on through the Hampshire and Isle of Wight local criminal justice board as well. That meets quarterly, and they are about to put on a much more statutory footing around domestic abuse and other things as well. In terms of the serious violence duty, I've been given £244,000 to ensure that public criminal justice and fire partners across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight are meeting their duty, that strategic needs assessments are carried out, and that the information comes to me as well as to the Ministry of Justice to make sure that it's going on. What they haven't told me is what I do if anyone doesn't do their strategic needs assessment, but I've been given £250,000 almost to make sure that the SNAs are being done and that the information is reported back. Prisons are able to opt into our way, CPS, police, fire, probation, all of those key partners, if they want to, or they can do it on their own. HMP Isle of Wight have said that they want to be part of the work that we are doing through the LCJB, so they will start coming to the Criminal Justice Board meetings. HMP Winchester, I haven't heard from yet, but they've got some other burning bridges right now. So, but yeah, so there is a lot of work going on behind the scenes. I'm happy to take it offline with you if you want me to.
Thank you, Donna.
I think from my point of view, it's interesting to hear what's been said, and I think it will be useful for us to have a paper on it, what is going. But I think that what I learned from that is that really our responsibilities haven't really much changed from what they were before. And that's the important issue, because I didn't really know whether they had or they hadn't from what was discussed in this meeting I attended. So it's clarified a lot of it for me. Thank you.
Okay. We are still on members. Yep, certainly.
I'd just like to ask the Chief Fire Officer exactly what advice is given to individual firemen and women who attend a domestic call-out and come across an assault, either verbally or an actual assault, that's taking place in that particular property. What advice do you give them as to what they should do?
Yeah, thank you for the question. We have very robust safeguarding arrangements, as you'd expect from an organisation like ours. So happily, again, in an APAG or something like that, we can talk you through each step of that work that our teams do. So one, they can refer immediately to policing or indeed other agencies, local authorities, adults safeguarding procedures or children's safeguarding procedures. They'll follow those processes. We have a very clear process they'll follow. And we have a number of occasions where this has happened for us, and our teams have safeguarding individuals, both adults and children, when they visited premises. So that we know that works well. It's been checked. It's also under the auspices of the safeguarding boards to make sure that we do comply with those acts. So I'm fairly confident that our process is run, but happily share with the details at an APAG in the future.
I could just come back briefly. What information are fire officers given as to the signs to look at when they come into a domestic property to see whether, in fact, an assault has taken place? I'm particularly thinking of the children and the sorts of early recognition that something has gone wrong, and that is obvious quite often a result of a particular fire officer, policeman, or someone other than a member of the social services team actually discovering what's going on. I just want to know what sort of advice you give them to what they should look for.
Yeah, they're all fully trained. They have a fully training package which has been devised and dealt with our partners in the Adult and Children Safeguarding Board. So the training they get is very thorough, gives them all those signs and symptoms, and if in doubt, they'll always refer. So if there's any doubt in their minds, they'll always refer, and then there'll be for others to make the judgment. So.
Yes, Zoe.
Most probably follows on with some of the conversations that I know Councillor Bundy and I have had with both Becky and with Molly about members' development. So looking at some of the legislative changes, policy, say prevent duty, for example, is about to be reviewed, and bringing that back to APAG or some form of members' development. So I think that's all we can say now, but we're in discussions to have a members' development plan that would include some of that legislative change that is happening within some of that space, and members' roles as well.
Okay, thanks. We're still on members' development. Anybody got anything else to add to that topic? Derek?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Well, I did touch on this at the APAG meeting, which was a couple of days after I returned. I did attend the fire leadership course in Warwick, Coventry. Very interesting, not so much on the leadership skills, but more on the interaction with the other 17 odd people there, all of a similar situation. Topics were primarily reform, white paper, pay awards, the common approach to the inspectorate's performance with most authorities, and generally financial constraints. Very little, that dictated the whole 2 days, to be quite frank. We're very privileged in having the Chief of Staff of the Inspectorate there. We're also had the top person on the reform from the Ministry on reform as well, and we're in reasonably good shape compared to a lot of other authorities on this particular matter. And that was about it for my activity, other than the attendance at Princess Trust events, which will go on, and starting this Thursday. Thank you.
Any more? No? You breathed in. Right. The appointments report, which is on page 13 of your paperwork. And I would ask Paul Hodgson to introduce this, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, members. So this is a very short and hopefully self-explanatory paper, just dealing with the fact that Councillor Hughes has ceased to be a member of the authority and Councillor Drew has now been appointed to replace him as one of the members from Hampshire County Council. So the revised composition of the authority is in the appendix 1, and there's no change to the overall political balance of the authority, and so no change to proportionality on committees, etc. But it is necessary to fill the vacancies that have arisen on the authority's committees and working groups, and the paper proposes the appointments set out in the recommendations to achieve to fill those vacancies. So that's probably, I think, all I need to say about it, unless anyone's got any questions.
Any questions, members? No.
May I just ask the effective date of these, specifically in the Principal Officer Pay Working Group, which we reduced from 3 to 2 in recent weeks? Will that now, is that immediate, this appointment now? Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so moving to the recommendations then. Before we do the recommendations,
Forgive me, Chairman. Can I just ask, it's fairly unusual for a member to leave the authority, not having done the sort of 4-year term of service. I just wondered whether anyone, perhaps yourself, Chairman, would write to him thanking him for his service for the authority.
He's most definitely in hand.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Only he did go rather quickly. Not for any reason, but he's moving house and things. But no, without doubt, we will do that.
Thank you.
So the recommendations are that the authority notes the updated political composition of the authority, proportional allocation of seats, 15th of June 2020. That Councillor David Drew is appointed in place of Councillor Hughes as the Government Committee. That Councillor David Drew is appointed in place of Councillor Hughes as the Conservative Deputy for 3S Fire CIC Stakeholder Committee. That Councillor Huggins is appointed to the Principal Officer's Pay Working Group, and that all other appointments remain as agreed at the authority's annual general meeting on 14th of June 2022. Agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Item 8, the annual pay policy statement on page 19 of your paperwork. And I would ask Molly Rowland to report on this, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. So this report is an annual report which meets the requirements of the Localism Act 2011, where we have to prepare and publish a pay policy statement every 12 months. For members who may not have seen this report in previous years, it provides a consistent framework for us to demonstrate transparency in how our staff are paid and rewarded. There are specific policies and remuneration principles that must be included in the statement, which are listed at paragraph 5 of the report, and these are all included within the pay policy statement, which is attached at Appendix A. A key aspect of the statement is to show the relationship between the remuneration of the Chief Fire Officer and the remuneration of the rest of the workforce. The multiples are currently 5.1 for the average Green Book member of staff and 4.7 for the average Grey Book member of staff. And when we compare ourselves against the similar fire services, we align fairly well. So for Essex, their multiple is currently 4. They base it on all of their staffing group. They don't do one for Grey Book and one for Green Book. And Kent apply the same, and theirs is 5.2. The pay multiples in our service have stayed consistent for a number of years, and that's largely due to pay awards for all staff either being similar or the same in some years. And so However, at the time of producing this report, not all pay awards have been agreed or paid, and so it's possible that these multiples will change once all pay awards have been finalised. The publication of a pay policy statement ensures that our communities are able to scrutinise the pay of our most senior officers and the pay frameworks for our employees. The Localism Act stipulates that the pay policy statement, which is at Appendix A, must be considered at a full authority meeting and cannot be delegated to a subcommittee. If the statement is approved today, it must then be published on our website in an accessible format to enable interested stakeholders to review our pay policies. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Molly. Members? Roger.
The only question I've got, Molly, is that because the pay negotiations have drifted and drifted for senior officers, do we have to reproduce this report to comply with the end of the year sort of report so that you've got the direct comparisons, or do we not have to do that? Do we just have to do it as it is known at the moment, and then the next one will be next year, whatever is known at that time?
Well, my advice would be that it would be sensible to update it on the basis that actually this statement doesn't include the Grey Book pay awards either, because they have not yet been, although they were agreed and we avoided industrial action, they haven't been paid yet. So when this report was run, based on all the figures, everybody's pay will have changed somewhat. So we could bring it by way of an update once all the pay awards have been finalised, because they are for this year and the year before. So I would recommend we return if members are happy with that.
I think that's a good idea, so we do have the direct comparisons. I think if we can send any messages anywhere, is that we should send messages that the pay awards shouldn't drift on and drift on and drift on at the national, between the national organisation who negotiates for the pay deal for firefighters and senior officers and their respective unions. It's crazy they get out of kilter to such an extent.
Okay, thank you, Roger. Cal?
Thank you, Chair. Similar line of questioning, but the opposite end of the spectrum. So in terms of the lowest paid employees, I know there's no one employed within grade A, but there are employees employed within grade B. And presumably the hourly rate listed of £10.79 an hour, is that not taken into account this year's or the most recent pay deals?
No, it doesn't. So that also doesn't include the most recent pay award. So all the figures are based on prior to pay awards being added.
Okay, that's fine, thank you.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I ask is that something I've long campaigned for in the community and in my home authority is living wage accreditation for organisations. The current living wage would be £10.90 an hour as the minimum that should be paid. I'm assuming once the pay deal is agreed that probably the minimum pay grade will go above that anyway. So it's just something I'd maybe encourage. I don't think the authorities at the moment or the services at the moment. If not, maybe that's something we could explore. Key to that is not only directly employed staff, but to get accreditation, also need to look at the supply chain and how much contractors are paying. So yeah, as I say, that's something I'd encourage us to look at in future if it's not already in hand.
Okay, thank you, Cal. Anybody else on this before we move to the recommendations, which are on page 22? And the recommendation is that Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Authority approve the pay policy statement at Appendix A for publication on Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Services website.
Mr. Chairman, should we add to that what Molly said, that a new document will be issued as soon as all the pay agreements have been settled? So as we've got it on record, we're going to do it.
Yep.
In case anybody picks us up.
Would that be in the minutes? Okay, will you add that to it?
I'm very happy to add that to it.
Okay, thank you, Roger. So, moving to item 9, which is the open minutes from 3S FAR CIC Stakeholder Committee on the 14th of March 23. And I would ask the chairman to comment on this, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I present the minutes under agenda item 9. I'm quite happy to answer any questions on that.
There was a technical bit on it in terms of attendance, because Tony Bundy was there. He promises he was, but he doesn't appear in the paperwork.
He can be trusted, Chairman. He was there.
Katie, can you sort that? Thank you. Members, any comments on this paper? No? No? Okay. Then I declare that the minutes are agreed and move to the next item on the agenda, which is to throw most of you out. Item 10, we are excluding the press and public. We're closing the meeting as the following reports are of confidential nature, and there is a requirement not to disclose information in the following reports. Information discussed, particularly in relation to external parties, is of a sensitive nature. Discussions, negotiations, proprietary information of business affairs, plans, intentions of, or technical information, designs, or trade secrets. So, Sparks, if you could close us down. And if those who are not staying